the landscape for Hep C work and kind of breaking down those barriers between clinicians, people who use the service, peers. It's just been phenomenal. As somebody that set up a project in 2012, like, to see where we are now, it just blows me away. And one of the big things has been the valuing of peers. So we were having a giggle yesterday with some people about when 8-10 years ago I was in a worldwide conference with one of the leading liver consultants, and he was really like, oh, what can peers bring to my work? Do you know, why would I have people with lived experience? Forward wind to 2022, that man goes all over the world talking about peers and how he couldn't do his work without the people that have got the lived experience. So far, this campaign has seen 37% reduction in deaths from Hep C, 52% reduction with liver transplants, and 85,000 people have been treated. So it's phenomenal work, and it's lives saved.
Just going back a little bit, does anyone know that the World Health Organization have made a pledge to eliminate hepatitis C worldwide by 2030? I worked in drug treatment for years, and if you'd have said this to me 10 years ago, that we were going to wipe out or eliminate hepatitis C, I'd have laughed. As a result of working with this team and getting the knowledge, we are going to achieve that goal ahead of 2030 in the UK.
So we've had a lot of presentations today that haven't been interactive. We haven't had a chance to hear from the audience. So one of the things that Tony and I would just really like to get a sense of why people think it's important to test and treat. Why do we do this? And if nobody puts their hand up, I will point to people. I have no shame. Yeah.
Transmission bonuses, myofamilies. When I had Hep C, I was very careful with my children recently. And at least I knew that although I didn't take the treatment until much, when I got into recovery years later, I knew. So I had a responsibility.
So there's something about that knowledge being power, isn't there? It's like you then had choices, whether you told people, whether you shared equipment, whether you onwardly transmitted. Thank you, Claudia. Anybody else?
Sure. One of my late brothers was in the late 60s, and he died 1,000 years ago. And when this is a bit bizarre, and I don't know if this is a context, but it has some context, because we couldn't go and see him when he died, and he was in the funeral parlour. And the funeral director found out he wouldn't let anyone go in there.
Yeah, and that is absolutely appalling, but sadly that was very similar. I live in Bournemouth, and if anybody died and they were found to have Hep C, the post-mortems were done up in Brighton. It's just shocking. It's shocking, and we're here today to talk about stigma and respect and disrespect, and how disrespectful.
Obviously, I don't blame the funeral director, because it was just a very process.
Yeah, totally.
We could put a spin on that as well. Why is it particularly important to test people and treat people in recovery, or test people in recovery?
Yep. Yeah. Can be. It was around 65 to 85% of people. Yeah. It's a microscopic bit of blood, so people wouldn't know that they were onwardly transmitting, and a lot of people didn't know anything about it. So yeah, I mean, I guess for us, fundamentally, every person, and we've heard a lot shared this morning, every person is somebody's daughter or son. You know, every single person, whether they choose to take drugs or not, is a human being. And so the main reason that we test and offer treatment is to preserve life. You know, that's for me, that's what recovery is all about. It's about a life, and a life beyond my wildest dreams.
And I suppose about making amends to yourself as well, isn't it? You know, to a lot of people in recovery, making amends is a massive part of that process. The person you should be making amends to as well is yourself, and part of making amends to yourself is looking after your health. And if you have had a risk of exposure in the past, get yourself tested, get yourself treated. It's never been easier.
Shouldn't give me a pointy thing. Sorry.
The top one. The middle one, middle. Middle.
Well, what's in the middle? Right. Did you want to?
Okay, liver facts. The liver is the largest organ inside the body, following the skin, which is an external organ. It is located behind the rib cage on the right side of your abdomen. You can feel it there. Yeah. It processes vitamins and nutrients from food. It regulates your hormones. It acts as a filter, removing toxins, chemicals and alcohol. And it's particularly important when we look at drug-related deaths, people who may have an affected liver with some liver damage. So the liver would be compromised in its job of filtering out toxins such as opiate drugs, and that can build up in the system, etc. And it combats infections.
So most people, when they choose a recovery and they stop their drug of choice, they do that because fundamentally something in them wants to live. So if we don't look at the overall physical health, then people's lifespan can be dramatically cut. So the importance of a healthy liver, as Tony's just alluded to, the immune system, digestive, kidneys, brain, pretty much your entire body relies on having a healthy liver. You know, inflammation of the liver can impair it, the major organs can be impacted, and the ability to fight infection is severely compromised. And as we've heard, significant liver damage can take years to develop. It's really not, one of the hardest things I've had to do in my career was find somebody's children on Facebook and tell them that they needed to come to the hospital if they wanted to see their mum before she passed away. It honestly, that moment, it gives me like, her children thanked me for reaching out, but it was still one of the hardest things I've had to do, not only in my career, but possibly my life, is to bring these 3 children that were estranged from their mum into hospital to say goodbye to her. And this is just like a bit, obviously we're not hepatologists. So it's always quite hard to follow somebody that's very high up in the academic world.
A professor.
But it just, the liver is an amazing organ, but when it gets to a certain point, it can't regenerate. And you'll hear in a minute about some of the people that we've come alongside. So this is where we want to kind of get in touch with people now and offer that testing and give them the choice of whether they want treatment. So Hep C treatment's life-saving. It can impact quality of life. It can mean years spent with ill health if we don't. And as I say, it's been very heart-rendering to see people that have chosen recovery and then have that taken away from them because of physical health that they could have got treated years before. So I don't know what we're doing for time, and I'm waiting for Tony to wave some white cards.
He's white carded me in the past.
I bet he has. I bet he has. So I'm somebody that can talk quite a lot, so I'm just going to look at my watch. So my personal experience, I could sit and talk to you for the next 7 or 8 hours of examples where I've been stigmatised, discriminated against. My unborn children were put on physical abuse registers by social services because I took drugs when I was pregnant, which they only knew because I asked for help. But I want to share a little bit about my Hep C journey. So I'm somebody that committed copious amounts of credit card fraud to fund my addiction, and invariably I ended up in prison. And the first time I went to prison, there were lots of girls that clearly shared that they'd been in and out. I didn't understand it. It was a world that was alien to me. But that was then going to be part of my journey for 7 years. So in 99, I got got sent to Bristol to go to a bail hostel. And at the time, I didn't know about the drug problem in Bristol. So in Bournemouth, if you wanted crack cocaine after 9 o'clock at night, you weren't going to get it. You just weren't going to get it. So when I discovered Bristol and the front line and the fact that there were 20 people that wanted to give me drugs all through the night, I was like, hey, I've arrived. So I met a man, as I did, and I moved in with a man, as I did. And I genuinely didn't know this man didn't have any teeth until one day he went at me. And I was a very naive drug user. I really was. And the man with no teeth, who also I later found out didn't have a driving licence and had been banned for 10 years, it's just nuts. So I bought this man a motorbike, and predictably we both came off the motorbike. I should have known it wasn't the romance of a century when he was more inclined to get the bike out of the road than me. That's just... I went to the hospital a week later when it was very apparent something was wrong, and I told them I was a heroin addict because I had morals and values and I knew that heroin might be masking the pain. They told me that I had a broken ankle, and to cut a very, very long and boring story short, the nurse said that I needed to come back the next day to get the plaster on my ankle changed. I said I had no way of getting there, and she said, well, you wouldn't have any problem scoring your drugs, would you? Which is as maybe, but I didn't need to go and score my drugs, but nobody could kind of unbolt my leg, take it off to get a plaster changed, and then bring it back to me. That kind of set in motion 9 months of devastation, degradation. My first boyfriend was HIV positive from contaminated blood scandal. He was haemophiliac, so I knew something about bloodborne viruses at the age of 16. It was AIDS, you're going to die, and so I had a bit of awareness. I knew that something was wrong, and my choices to smoke heroin and crack cocaine were taken away, so I started injecting. How I didn't kill somebody, because I didn't know that you took air out of needles. I look back and I have no problem knowing that God was looking after me. I really don't. But at the end of my drug use, I was taking needles out of sin bins. I was desperate, the degradation and everything. And I kept getting arrested on no bail warrants, and they would take one look at me. So it was 9 months now. So every bit of my arms were open, I had deep abscesses, and the drug service were just saying it was my drug use, which is clearly, but I didn't inject in the side of my head. They were just dealing with the best they could as I presented. It turned out I had a broken hip that I'd had for 9 months. I had a subcapital displaced fracture of the neck of femur, which needed an operation within 6 hours to reduce the fracture. I had I didn't know, but I had hepatitis A. I had MRSA. I am lucky to be stood here. So I ended up back in prison, and there was this lovely nurse, Jane, and because she treated me with respect, because she was genuinely kind and compassionate and didn't judge me, she asked me if I wanted a Hep C test. Now, this was before opt-out Hep C was even a thing. This was 2001. So I said, yes, yeah, okay, because I liked her. She then got my results and said, oh, do you want me to come to your cell later? I went, no, just tell me. So she told me over these little prison thing. Well, at that point, I had a broken hip that had gone diagnosed. I had bits of my leg bone coming out of my hip. Glad we're on before lunch. And I was very, very, very poorly. I was less than 6 stone in weight. Every bit of me had deep infections. So she told me I had Hep C, and it was like, yeah, and what, really, and what? When I got released from prison and I went back to my dad's where my young child was, I felt that shame. I felt, oh my goodness, I can't leave my toothbrush around, I can't leave my razor around, I can't. And at the time it was interferon treatment, and all I'd heard was that I was going to, and this is not language I use, but this was quotes, that I was going to get nutted off, I was going to destroy my life, I was going to relapse on drugs, I was going to kill myself, all that stuff. So I went, nah, not doing that. So I started work for Change, Grow, Live in 2007, and about 2 weeks later I was offered interferon again. So I was about 3 years in abstinent, coming up 4 years in abstinent recovery. So all I'd heard was these messages, and I spoke to my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and we knew that we wanted a child together, and I didn't want Hepatitis C all over my notes. You know, I've got the experiences of being last for an operation. I've got the experiences of a dentist. You know, when I had a minor operation, and the theatre nurse went, oh, we've got a high-risk one here. I went, excuse me? She went, brr. I went, no, please, elaborate. And she got all flustered because obviously professionals aren't used to being challenged. I went, if you're talking about the hepatitis C, if you check your notes properly, you'll see that I've been treated. And not only have I been treated, but shouldn't you be cleaning the theatre just as carefully before to the person whose status you don't know? And the consultant, well, this is highly inappropriate. And when I went for the outpatients, he suggested I put in a complaint. So forward wind many years, we now work in Hep C, and it's our privilege to educate people and dispel those myths that, you know, if somebody's passed away, believe it or not, you're not going to catch their Hep C. So I took the treatment. They said I would lose weight. I was like, bring it on! I didn't lose a pound, and I was devastated. I worked all the way through it. I did my degree all the way through it. I maintained my relationships and everything. And you know, if we were doing this talk 8 or 9 years ago, you know, my message would be, none of us have got crystal balls. So although there's hesitancy to come forward for Hep C treatment, had I not had been treated in 2007, in 2012, when the bone infection came back in my hip, normal infection markers are 0 to 9. Mine was over 600. I was in intensive care for a week before I was stable enough to operate to get my infected hip out. I wouldn't be here now. You know, if you'd told me that in 2007, I would go, oh, I'm in recovery, everything's wonderful, my physical health's wonderful. You know, I didn't think I was ever going to get the osteomyelitis again. I was 10 years in recovery when it came back. You know, we haven't got crystal balls. We don't know what is in the future for the people that we come across, our family, our friends, the people that we serve in our professional lives. So I did the treatment, you know, it was still, there wasn't support for people back then. So, you know, in 2012, I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to set up a service, you know, and we're all, you know, like every one of us here has got that potential to make differences, to make changes. And I just want to finish on a couple of stories. So one of my Hep C mentors, Nettie, 35 years in injecting drug user into her groin. You know, she was the first person when I set up the service in 2012. I went, please, go, like we've got this treatment. Can we support you? And she was so resistant because she'd seen her daughter's father go through interferon treatment and was really poorly. You know, when we got the go-ahead to give everybody direct antivirals, I got her in. You know, she did her course of treatment, and she said at the end of it, Louise, that is the first time I've taken responsibility for everything in my life. She's now in long-term recovery, volunteering, and, you know, another one of my mentors, Wayne, sadly left it too late. You know, so he's somebody that I alluded to earlier. 4 or 5 years in recovery, really committed in the church, in Cocaine and Anonymous. You know, sadly, his choice of what he did next was taken away because he developed liver cancer. You know, so I can't get over, you know, if you're going about your business and you see somebody that could benefit from a test. Weldon, his wife, is out there at the moment doing this. The pathways are really easy. The testing is really easy. There's equipment. You know, there really isn't any reason why anybody needs to die with untreated hepatitis C and the family possibly going through shame and lack of understanding from professionals and fear. Do you know, we know that it's not malicious, but for the person on the end of that, it can be horrendous, absolutely horrendous. You know, and I'll pass over to Tony.
Thanks, Lou. Yeah, similar story, but a lot of differences. I was a lost boy from far back as I can remember. I felt lost, and I don't come from a broken home, but my family life was broken, and I was looking for an escape from as far back as I can remember, and I found myself living. I'm from Birmingham, and I found myself living on the streets of King's Cross at the age of 15. Within 24 hours of squatting around the King's Cross area, I sat in a flat and injected my first dose of heroin. The needle went round the room, maybe 20 people used it before me. Me being a child, a young, bottom of the food chain, no thoughts about it. On self-destruct, death wish, I injected heroin with that used needle. I thought I'd found the solution to all my problems. You know, I found a place where I fitted. I thought, you know, and that was my journey then, you know. Jails, prisons, all that kind of treatment centres, detox centres, community drug teams. It wasn't until about 1986, I think it was, I was admitted to hospital with pains in my side, and I was in a bed. They gave me some drugs in the hospital, which I was very grateful for. I was woke up about 4 a.m. by a consultant shouting, "Get that," I'm not going to use the language he used, "Get him out of this hospital. Why are you giving a junkie drugs in my hospital?" to this younger doctor. I unceremoniously discharged from the hospital in the middle of the night. I went back to my doctors a few days later, and I was diagnosed with an illness called hepatitis non-A, non-B. It meant nothing. It was just, you know, I was on self-destruct. You know, like Lou, a lot of my risky stuff was done in my early recovery. You know, I was the kind of kid, it was before needle exchanges, early 80s. I would climb into doctors' back gardens. I'd break open their waste bins and take needles out with, you know, and just use them. I'd inject out of puddles, toilet bowls. I really did not care, you know. It wasn't until I was prescribed injectable drugs that I started to be careful about not sharing equipment and stuff. But I was in hospital with gangrene and loads of open wounds in 1992. I wasn't expected to live through it. And I was diagnosed with hepatitis C then. They came to this diagnosis. The cleaning staff in the hospital refused to clean my room. You know, it was just, we talk about stigma, horrendous. And when I got out of hospital, I recovered from that, obviously, because I'm standing here 20-odd years later. I went to my dentist and I disclosed. I thought I'd do the right thing. I'll tell my dentist I've got Hep C. Family dentist, mum and dad went there, my brothers and sisters went there. He completed my treatment and says, I'm discharging you from this dental practice after today because you're too high risk and I don't want to treat you anymore. And this is... I was first got a bit of knowledge about Hep C when I went into a residential treatment centre in Western-super-Mare 12-step, and once a week the nurses did a workshop on health-related issues, and they did one on bloodborne viruses. You know, and straight away, because I knew I had Hep C, it was doom and gloom, and I thought I was going to die. You know, anyone who's got Hep C is going to get liver cirrhosis and liver cancer unless they're treated. So I attempted to get treatment when I left that rehab. I relapsed, went back onto injectable methadone. They declined me treatment because they said I wasn't stable enough at that time. You know, years and years later, after getting into recovery in 2004, I kind of set my sight on making amends to me. And part of that amends process was to get my hepatitis C treated. And I went on the interferon treatment the same year as Lou in different parts of the country, and I completed that treatment, and they lied to me about weight loss. You know, I just had this new... I was like a really skinny kid, and my nicknames on the road was like Bones, because I was that skinny. Bony Tony and all this stuff. You know, and I put on recovery weight, and I just thought, oh, the one bonus of interferon treatment is I'm going to lose a bit of fat. Didn't. It was horrendous. I had permanent mouth ulcers, I had a 6-month-long chest infection, etc., but it cleared my virus. And still to this day, when I go to hospital, I was in hospital earlier in the year with chest pains, and it turned out it was recovery anxiety, not a heart attack. And the doctor came up to me and said, you know you're Hep C positive. Like 15, 16, 18 years or whatever it is after I was treated, I still get that. Every time I go to hospital, they draw my notes out and say, oh, Hep C positive. Yeah, no, I have to say, no. I may be antibody positive, but I am actually virus negative. You know, I have been treated in the past. Like Lou, I could go on and on and on. I remember I shared in a meeting once, before I knew it was 50 minutes had gone. You know what I mean? And everyone was like rolling their eyes and stuff. Got a lot to say.
Same.
I see Tony's got the white card already.
Right, so we work on this project, Hep C Later. If you want to upskill your knowledge on Hep C, please check it out. We've got lots and lots of printed materials. There's a NHS portal that you can just send off for a test. I don't think I did it. Not me. Yeah, so there's a NHS portal that you can get a free Hep C test. It's an amazing service. We've got lots and lots of material. We've got, you know, if anybody that's interested in CPD training, please do check it out. It's like an hour, a couple of hours course. We'll give you everything that you need to know. And that's all some of the stuff that we've got.
Can I end on this? Why I brought up earlier on, why is it important to test and treat people in recovery? People who are actively engaged in services are offered a test and treat all the time. There's people who have got into recovery who may not have accessed services and are now in recovery and may not know they have Hep C. And there's a chappie in Birmingham, never had a Hep C test in his whole life, never engaged with services, injecting drug user. He was diagnosed with end-stage liver cancer as a result of undiagnosed hepatitis C. So it's important for people in recovery who may have left the old life behind and may be forgetting about all that stuff. It's important to still get yourself checked out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise and Tony. I never have the heart to white card Tony. He's an old friend and one of the people who helped me to get into recovery originally. Yeah, I think Tony nailed it when he talked about making amends to ourselves. In early recovery, we have to learn to look after ourselves, our health and our well-being. One of the first things I did was go to the dentist. I hadn't been for years and years. The dentist said, oh, I can see you haven't been to a dentist for a long time. Thankfully, I went then, and I've still got some of my own teeth. If I'd left it any longer, maybe not. But please, if you work in a service where you're working with people in early recovery, please have a chat with Louise and Tony over lunch, because they can support you to have those difficult conversations with people you're working with and encourage them to get tested and treatment if they need it. Okay, before lunch, we've got the second of our experts by experience, Dale. Would Dale like to come up? Thanks, Dale.
Hi everyone. So I'm Dale. I work in drug and alcohol recovery. Obviously I'm conscious I'm the guy before lunch and probably everyone's hungry, so I'm just going to take you a deep dive into a bit of my background and talk about self-care and self-respect in recovery. As someone who's been to the depths of despair with substance addiction, which was brought about by the loss of my partner to cancer many years ago, the tragedy opened up my gateway to addiction in the form of sleeping tablets. I was struggling to sleep. I used to imagine what it would be like to lose a loved one, but nothing could have prepared me for the deep pain and hurt and emotion that comes with that. So the sleeping tablets helped me escape from the overwhelming thoughts of suicide and unfathomable anguish. I remember one night in particular, I'd spent the past week deciding how I was going to end it all. I decided how and felt completely at peace, fell asleep. Tomorrow was going to be that day. During the night, I had the most lucid dream that I'd ever had, ever before. It was complete darkness. I could feel something was hunting me. I felt fear, complete panic. Through the darkness, in the distance, I could see a faint light. It was more than a light. I was absolutely drawn to it. As I ran as fast as I could, it gradually started to take the form of a lighthouse. Whatever was hunting me was getting closer. I had to make it to the big red door. I burst through and made my way as fast as I could up the illuminated spiral staircase. When I finally got to top, my partner was there. She hugged me, told me everything was going to be okay. I didn't want the feeling of happiness and peace to end, but it was cut short. She told me she had to go now, and I woke up. It was now morning, but the feelings of ending my life had gone. I knew I had to keep going and carry on living. The next day, the doctor withdrew my prescription for sleeping tablets. Apparently I was abusing them and that my prescription was going to be terminated. So to be able to sleep from then on, obviously, you know, I needed them to sleep, you know. I used alcohol instead. But all that did was just make me more depressed, more agitated. So one of the nights I couldn't sleep, agitated state, I went for a walk, and it was about 1 a.m. in the morning. I started chatting to a guy that was rough sleeping, you know, just wandering around. Told him my story, and he said that he smoked something to help him sleep, which was heroin. In my inebriated state, I asked to try some, and that was the beginning of my heroin addiction, just so I could sleep at night. My addiction I ended up losing my job, my home, my boat, car, possessions, ended up street homeless. And then, you know, the usual thing that happens, you start, you know, mixing with other people, smoking heroin, you start smoking crack cocaine. And that was a further downhill spiral from then. But at my lowest point, I was introduced to a charity, a local charity, and my road to recovery began. My recovery from addiction was a challenging journey, one that required not just physical healing, but also emotional and physical support. And at the heart of this journey were the dual concepts of self-care and self-respect. These two elements are not just beneficial, but absolutely essential for a successful and sustainable recovery. Addiction changes you forever, and it's paramount that you acknowledge the personal role self-care and self-respect can offer during the recovery process. Self-care is a practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health. It's about being kind to yourself, both physically and mentally. In the context of my addiction, and recovery. Self-care meant me taking deliberate, purposeful steps to support my body and mind as I healed. It was about finding a balance and making choices that contributed to my overall well-being. To do this, I sought medical help in the first instance. I was placed on a heroin substitute, methadone, which allowed my body to function without withdrawals. So I no longer needed to spend all day, hunting for dealers. I can now focus on me and getting through it. Self-care can take many forms. One of them being physical care. So this involved getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, and engaging in regular mindfulness activities. Addiction took a great toll on my body. I actually lost over half my body weight. So part of the recovery journey is allowing your body to heal and regain strength. So I made sleep plans. I joined a 24-hour gym, just because my sleep plan was really weird, and if I wanted to go at 3 a.m, I could. I planned my meals for the week. At the time, I was in an abstinence-based house as well, so I'd moved on from being homeless and had access to an amazing kitchen. So after the gym, really early in the morning, or whatever time at night, I'd make a banana and cinnamon toastie about 6 o'clock in the morning, porridge and blueberries at about 9, followed by some scrambled egg, toast and salmon and fruit, and then maybe a hearty dinner of something like roast chicken and veg for lunch. The food and proper sleep helped me to move on to the next step, which was me engaging in therapy in the form of bereavement counselling, which helped me to understand the importance of emotional care. Emotional care involves acknowledging and processing your emotions, which was completely alien to me. I'd never been able to process the many traumatic experiences in my life, instead turning to substances to mask the overwhelming and emotional feelings that I was having. Understanding my emotional self-care enabled me to manage my stress, my anxiety, depression, which were basically all at the core of my addiction. Social care. So I surrounded myself with supportive and understanding people. Old friends I reconnected with, family I'd lost contact with, and others who were in a similar recovery position to me, abstinent. I built a network of friends and family and support groups who helped me encourage my journey and made a significant difference. Spiritual care. So for many, connecting with their spiritual side, whether through religion, nature, or personal reflection, can provide a sense of purpose and peace. But for me personally, I'm a bit of a geek. I enjoyed exploring physics, origins of humanity, and the nature of our reality, which turned out to be a rabbit hole that I'm actually still in at the moment. Self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity, especially during recovery. And here's why it's so important. It promotes physical healing. As I mentioned earlier, addiction often damages the body, so proper nutrition and exercise and rest are fundamental to repairing this damage and rebuild your physical health. It supports mental health. So recovery was an emotional roller coaster for me. Self-care practices like therapy, meditation, and learning help me manage my emotions and reduce my risk of a relapse. Builds resilience. The journey to recovery is filled with ups and downs, trials and tribulations. Recovery, self-care helped me to build that resilience, making it easier for me to cope with those challenges and setbacks that occurred along the way. Taking time for self-care activities. This self-knowledge was crucial for understanding my triggers and avoiding the nightmare relapses. Self-respect meant recognising my worth and treating myself with kindness and dignity. It was about me valuing myself enough to make the right choices and supported my well-being. Self-respect for me was about acknowledging that I deserve a life free from addiction by working towards it and that I was worth it. Self-respect is vital in recovery for many reasons. Encourage positive choices. So when you respect yourself, you're more likely to make decisions that benefit your health and recovery. This includes avoiding situations or people that may trigger relapse. I set boundaries for myself. Self-respect helps you establish and maintain healthy boundaries. This was essential to protecting me from negative influences. Recovery can feel sometimes overwhelming, so fostering self-respect helped me boost my confidence and self-esteem and reinforce the belief that I can overcome addiction. I created a routine, establishing a routine that included time for self-care activities, provided structure and stability. For me, like I said, it included the gym, cooking and meditation. Seeking professional help, I mean, that was really the key for me. I often wish I'd sought professional help in the beginning, but in my stubbornness, as always, I always thought I could deal with everything on my own, which inevitably led to, my downfall with addiction. Setting realistic goals. Setting small achievable goals gave me a sense of accomplishment and kept me motivated. I did level 2 in counselling, which I passed, which gave me the confidence to do a diploma. Celebrate your successes, no matter how small they may seem. At the time, one of my main goals, when I actually moved into a flat after being in an abstinence-based house, was to come off the methadone, which for me was like, this ball and chain, like controlling my life completely. I did this basically, I locked myself away, I dropped myself, which, is you're not really supposed to do, but I used to just take a little bit and leave it in the cupboard. But it worked for me. It made me feel like if I needed it, it was always there. But I never went back to it. I ended up tipping the whole lot into the sink when I finished anyway. But after a week after taking my last drop, and it was about after a week, it was amazing that I didn't, I couldn't imagine the day that I wouldn't feel like I needed that anymore. So that was really good. Staying away from people and places and situations that may trigger a relapse. Protecting your environment is an act of self-respect. I used to have a rule, I called it the 3-second rule. If I met somebody on the street, a person that was still, quite in the depths of their addiction, somebody I might be, used substances with in the past, I would consciously make sure the interaction was just 3 seconds long. I know it may sound harsh, but that was me, protecting myself, just worrying about, a relapse. Engage in activities you enjoy. Rediscover hobbies and activities that you used to enjoy. Engage in positive activities provided me a sense of fulfillment and distracted me from the cravings and negative thoughts. So I'll give you a personal example. One of the first things I purchased, so after gym membership, was a metal detector, which actually turned out to be another addiction in disguise, but a good one. I live by the sea, so I would comb the beach, getting excited when I heard the metal detector go off. I wasn't using headphones, so other people walking their dog would hear it, and they would stop. So once they heard the long tone, to watch me dig up this unknown treasure, which, inevitably turned out to be a ring pull or, an old bit of barbecue or something. But, I enjoyed it. It made me feel good. It didn't matter about, finding. I found some quite good stuff as well, not just, ring pulls, but, it took a long time. But it made me feel good. And any rubbish that I found also, I was just put in the bin, so, I was cleaning the beach at the same time. Another example, the universe has always fascinated me. So I purchased a telescope. I've always been an avid subscriber to ancient astronaut theory, which is another rabbit hole. And after reading a book called The 12th Planet by Zecharia Sitchin during my recovery. So I bought this telescope. I'd spend hours scouring the night sky, deep down, hoping to spot a UFO. I'm disappointed to say I haven't yet. I know they're there, so I'm going to keep going. But again, I was engaging in activities that I enjoyed, and that I got so much out of it. In conclusion, self-care and self-respect are not just beneficial, but are an essential component of addiction recovery. They provided me with a basic foundation upon which my successful recovery was built on. By taking care of my physical and emotional health and valuing myself helped empower me to overcome the challenges of addiction. Recovery is a journey, not a destination. Along this journey, treating yourself with kindness, compassion, and respect will make all the difference. You are worth the effort, and you deserve a life free from addiction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dale. That was a brilliant description and explanation of self-care and self-respect in recovery, and some brilliant practical examples from your own life, and all the different dimensions to it: the physical, the mental, the emotional, the social, the spiritual. There's a real high point to finish before lunch. Before we go, somebody's lost a phone. It's got a white back on it. If you do find the phone, could you leave it with the guys in the office, please? So we're going to finish for lunch. We're going to start up again right on 2:30. Please make some time to go and talk to the guys on the stalls downstairs. So they've given up their day to come and talk to you about how they can support you to support the people that you're working with. So please go and have a chat with them. They've got loads of freebies for you as well. And lunch is downstairs. Thanks.